Still. Cold. Gray. These are the words that describe that dreadful morning 12 years ago on this very day, March 22nd. The chill in the air was palpable, and the gray that winter had left behind had not yet lost its grip. My cell phone rang that morning, and it was my dad. "Hey, Dad," I said. "Tony, she's dead. Pam, Mom, she committed suicide." Immediately, my legs gave way as his words pierced my heart. The decision that day would change the course of history for me, for my kids, for my family, for my clients, and my career. Pamela Mae Hixon was graduated as a registered nurse in 1971, quickly climbing through the healthcare ranks and starting as a floor nurse at a local hospital. But the long hours and swing shift proved difficult as she raised her young family, including my sister and myself. She soon found a job as a home health nurse, offering more regular hours and a steady income. And it was there that she was first introduced to hospice. Within a short amount of time, she became the director of hospice at a local agency. It was her career and calling as a hospice nurse that was her ultimate joy, her greatest calling, her significance, and her purpose. It was this career in hospice that led to the greatest career burnout I had ever seen. In the mid-2000s, electronic medical records, EMR, became a thing. And my mom, technologically challenged, found herself behind a desk more often than she was able to be bedside, caring for the terminally ill as they passed from this life to the next. Instead, administrative work, bureaucracy, and EMR became her begrudging focus. And suffering from relational and spiritual and emotional and career burnout, she wanted nothing more than to retire, to exit the rat race and enjoy a quiet life on the farm that my dad and her still lived on. So she ran the idea past her primary financial advisor, the idea of retiring, in which this advisor pulled out her credentialing experience in software and decided and came up with the fact that my mom and dad had enough money and gave her the green light to retire. And I was 8 years into my career at the time, and she wanted to give me the opportunity to provide a second opinion. And I pulled out my credentialing, my experience, and my software, and I came up with the same result. Mom and dad had enough money, and I too gave her the green light to retire. And so she did. Retiring in the fall of 2010, within a short amount of time, we knew something was wrong. The significance and purpose that she had felt in her career were now nowhere to be found. She knew exactly what she was retiring from, but had no idea what she was retiring to. My dad was still employed, working at the time. Her social connections that she had at the office were still at work, and she found herself bored and wandering. She had enough money to sleep at night, but not enough purpose to get up in the morning. And 6 months after retiring, she fell into a deep depression as her mental health spiraled downward. And on the morning of March 22nd, 2011, my mom, Pam Hixon, chose to take her life. And the ripple effects of that decision were staggering. My dad, they were high school sweethearts, had no one to journey through the rest of life with. My sister and I know Mom. And my kids, her grandkids, would miss out on the blessing that their grandma would be to them as they grew up. And I was left to pick up the pieces. You see, I was one of the financial advisors that gave my mom the green light to retire, the very thing that led to her death. And I could have let I felt immense amount of guilt and shame, and I could have let that guilt define me, to ruin me. But I chose, by God's grace, to turn this tragedy into triumph and these stumbling blocks into stepping stones. And I learned the hard way that money is only a part of the equation. Meaning, purpose, living significance, and finding meaning in the second half is just as crucial. It's not near as important for the retiree to define what they're retiring from, but it's important that they do the hard work of understanding who they are apart from their career, to understand who they are and to discover what they're retiring to. I believe that our greatest victories are often found in life's transitions. The problem is these transitions can lead to stress and conflict and change. And retirement is a voluntary transition. And oftentimes, we've prepared financially, but we don't know how to continue a life of joy and purpose in our second half. And oftentimes, the retiree can feel a sense of loss and a feeling of being lost within the first few months of retirement. As for loss, they feel this as they experience a loss of structure and routine, a loss of a steady paycheck, a loss of significance or title or power that they may have had in their career, a loss of social connections that they once had at the office. As for lost, they feel this as they look forward into their future and they have no idea who they are, let alone what they want to do. But I believe that retirement can be one of the most beneficial, rewarding, and fulfilling times in our lives if we do the hard work of transitioning well. How is that possible, you ask? The statistics would show that over 40% of retirees will experience some sort of anxiety and depression within the first 2 years of retirement. Further research reveals that divorce rates spike within a short amount of time as marriages are tested from the career phase where there was a bit of healthy separation to now being together all the time. Well, it is possible. How? In a word, halftime. Halftime, think of a football game. The teams go out in the first half and they play the game. And they go to the locker room at halftime. And they assess what happened and they come out and they come up with a game plan to come out in the second half and win the game. No one remembers the score at halftime. But victories often hang in the balance of a successful halftime. So what makes a successful halftime? I believe there are 4 main aspects. First, discover your values. What makes you unique? I believe each one of you were created on purpose for a purpose. You each have a unique set of skills and abilities and passions that other people don't have. This answers the question of, who am I? And it creates a vision for your future. Next, once you decide what that vision is, I call it reorienting and repurposing. And you determine where you want to go. Perhaps it's volunteering at the local nonprofit. Perhaps it's starting a new business or working part-time. Or it's taking a skill you currently have and using it in a new way. It's about putting traction to discovering who you are and making a bigger future for yourself. Once you've decided where you're going to go, ask yourself, who's coming alongside me? This is about securing social connections. We were made for relationships. And oftentimes in retirement, it's important for us to replace workmates with playmates. These could be kids, grandkids, or people that you meet at clubs, organizations, or churches. We were made for social connections, and securing them in your second half is crucial to a successful retirement. Last, I call leave a legacy. This answers the question, why is all this important? Well, it's important for a few reasons. The first of which, we want our life on earth to matter. We want to finish this race well. We don't want to look back with any regrets. Another reason is we want to help those who are left behind. But so often we think of leaving our legacy as our estate planning documents. Well, I'm here today to say we don't have to wait until we're gone to start leaving our legacy. It can start today. Write that note to a loved one. Send that text to a grandkid. Document that story, that life lesson for the next generation to learn from. What gifts of your time, talents, and treasure can the next generation get from you today? Well, as you can see, I've learned a lot from my mom's tragedy. And in late 2019, I embarked on a journey to put her story and these learnings into book form. Little did I know in a few short months, March of 2020, COVID would hit and cause major disruptions in the markets and economy and the wealth management firm that I co-founded. All the while dealing with enforcing COVID policies, I was pecking away at my manuscript, concluding my 35,000-word manuscript in the fall of 2020. I submitted my manuscript to my publisher, and it underwent its first round of edits called a developmental edit. I was assigned to a lead editor whom I immediately looked up on LinkedIn, only to find that Lisa had a Doctor of Literary Science from Harvard. I thought, this will be interesting. 5 weeks later, I received my manuscript back. And perhaps you've used the track changes function in Microsoft Word, and if you have, you know that if there's a change, it turns it red. When I opened up my manuscript for the first time, I saw a sea of red. And I was devastated. Each page was littered with critique, and I wanted to stop. I wanted to give up. I invited my business partner, Adam, down to my office. I said, look what she's done. Being a good friend and business partner that he is, he looked at me and said, I understand. But you can't stop now. You wanted to honor your mom's legacy. Keep going, you can do it. Later that evening, I showed my wife, Carrie, look at what happened. Carrie saw the destruction. But she laid her hand on my shoulder, and she said, you can't stop now. I believe in you. And later that night, I shook my fist at God, and I said, how did you let this happen? I don't have time for this. Why? And I've never heard God speak audibly to me, but in my spirit, I heard him say, Tony, I gave you a Doctor of Literary Science from Harvard. You're welcome. And with that, my attitude changed. And I couldn't wait to get back to the office, where I patiently and painstakingly combed through her edits. Around that time, February of 2021, I wanted to reconnect with a good friend and business mentor of mine who had retired about 4 months earlier. We met at a coffee shop, and I expected to hear stories of how his kids and travel and grandkids and his nonprofit passion points were filling his time. And instead, upon arrival, I saw a semblance of the man that I once knew. And after exchanging cordialities, I decided to try to dig a bit below the surface. I looked him in the eye and I said, Joe, how's retirement treating you? And in a moment of vulnerability, Joe decided to be honest with me. And he looked at me and he said, Tony, not well. You see, I prepared financially. I met with my advisor and he gave me the green light. I have enough money, but life just feels so meaningless. I feel so lost. Need I remind you, I was midway through my edits at the time. To say that I knew my content was an understatement. And because Joe had opened his heart to me, I knew I needed to steward this moment well. I looked Joe in the eye and I said, have I ever told you the story of my mom? Later that afternoon, my wife Carrie came to town so we could do lunch. I couldn't wait to tell her about what had happened that morning, and the impact that Mom's story and this content was having on others. And it was 8 months before the book would even be published, already having an impact, a positive impact on others. And she was excited. And as Providence would have it, at the very same time, I received a text from Joe. And far be it for me to be one of those married couples that stares at their phone the whole time as you eat lunch together. So I asked permission, can I check this text? It's from Joe. She said, absolutely, please do. And I opened the text, and tears began to flow. And the text read, Tony, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your mom's story. Whether you know it or not, today, you quite literally saved a life. Ladies and gentlemen, my mom was a nurse, and as such, she cared for her patients well. And I'm a financial advisor, and as such, I care for my clients well. And this message and this platform provides me the opportunity to join my purpose with hers as we seek to help those who are transitioning into retirement to avoid the same mistakes and the mental health challenges that come from an unplanned retirement. Do the work. Money is only part of the equation. Take a half time. Make your future bigger than your past. And in retirement, in your second half, may you find meaning, live with purpose, and leave a legacy. Thank you.